Hey guys, it's a steaming pile of ship here, and in today's video we'll be taking a look at the Tier 10 Japanese battleship, the Yamato. We're here on, I believe this map is called Shatter, and we are going to head towards the sea, and we're going to try and provide a little bit of overwatch for it. This match is played on, I think this patch was around 0.6.5. It's a little bit, I think it's about 2 patches back. But we haven't really seen a heck of a lot of balance changes that are going to make this game irrelevant, so I thought I'd go ahead and show it anyways because it was a pretty decent game I had in this ship that just shows how powerful it can be in the right situation. I mentioned we're going off towards sea here. Luckily the enemy only has 1 destroyer, we have 2, but being a battleship, seeing only 1 destroyer really makes you a very happy captain. Normally you'll see destroyers go on the opposite side, or really basically both sides of the island on sea, and inevitably usually the enemy team always creeps in before you can get the cap or after you get the cap, and they basically contest it or capture it if you've already left the area, but normally that doesn't happen. I want to basically go over and prevent any ships from being able to safely do that, and we're going to be using that small island a little bit south and to the east of sea. I don't really want to push past it because you see there are a lot of ships on the way already. Some of them are about to start capping, and we're going to try and get a bead on the ships over there. Hopefully it didn't lose the lock because they ended up disappearing. It looks like we got 1 regular pen. Must have been the Neptune as well. I think the game is bugging, or the replay is bugging out, because it says we were aimed at the Des Moines when I fired. However, we definitely didn't hit him because he's full health. But anyways, I was talking about the lock. You lose accuracy whenever you don't have the lock, and I definitely hit the Neptune because I just caught a glimpse of him. I'm popping my scout plane so that I can hopefully get some shots over the islands, or well, a little bit close to it now probably for the Yamato. But I was hoping to provide a little bit of vision by popping this little plane, and it does seem that somebody is spotting the enemy Iowa. He is coming straight towards us, but I want to point out one of the major advantages that the Yamato has against pretty much any ship in the game. In fact, sometimes it's a disadvantage because most times you can get some really good penetrations on certain ships from the front. Now those were 3 regular pens and we did 13,000 damage. The guns on the ship I mentioned, or I think I mentioned, I can't remember now, they're very, very good. They're 18-inch guns, they have incredible penetration, and they're often able to Citadel Yamato, or not Yamato, excuse me, Montanas and Iowas through the bow if they're close enough. Now we were a little farther away, but you saw just how much damage we did to him even though he was completely bow onto us. And that is one advantage that the Yamato has pretty much over every other battleship in the game. The Neptune tries to dodge the salvo we send his way, but unfortunately for him he's a little too close to do that and get away completely unscathed, so we get a nice, I think 19,000 damage hit on him, including a Citadel. So he's hurting pretty badly. Friendly Benson going right in front of me and providing me for a smokescreen, so I thank him in the chat. I always encourage this, especially if you're a lower tier destroyer and you don't think you're going to be as useful. You can always be a team player and smoke your allies, no matter what ship you're in. Although, of course, it is a little bit harder to do that in the German destroyers since they have well, they have very, very bad smoke for this purpose. But you see that Benson was being a very good team player, and I definitely encourage that. The enemy Yamato gets very lucky. I didn't quite aim properly enough to get a Citadel, but we are going to try and get some fire started, hopefully with our secondary guns. And it does look like he's already burning in 2 spots, so he might end up putting those out, and if he does, I hope that the Benson manages to land a torpedo on him, because that will potentially start some flooding, and it does look like he put those out. Unfortunately, it also looks like he's going to dodge out of the way of these torpedoes. I was kind of hoping he might turn back in once he was done, but it looks like he's going to keep going that direction. So we'll go ahead and fire, because if you don't fire, you're obviously not doing any damage, so we might as well try and do something. I probably should have saved it though, because the Iowa is coming back around the corner here. Now I'm starting to move forward. I want to help out. The friendly Benson over there is getting spotted by aircraft, but I also want to help shoot down any of those aircraft, as well as hopefully try and get moving, get some momentum, so that if the aircraft go after me, which is a very real possibility, I am a very threatening ship. I do not want him to go for me and me be a completely sitting duck, so we'll go ahead and fire at this Iowa, and then we're going to start going for a dodge on these enemy torpedo bombers, and this puts me in a very bad situation as we double sit the Iowa and kill him. We are on fire in 3 different locations. We are trying to dodge torpedo bombers, and currently we are also fairly broadside to an enemy Yamato, and you saw me delete the Iowa fairly well. This is not a very good position for me to be in. Luckily, looks like I'm only going to take 2 torpedoes, and I'm also going to luck out and not take any citadel damage from the enemy Yamato, but that was a very bad situation to be in. And it's those types of situations that the Yamato really does struggle with, as I hit him for a nice 14,000 damage. Again, talking about the guns, they are a major advantage that this ship has over every other battleship. I would not have gotten that salvo with a Montana or a Gros Secours first unless I was firing HE, and we all know that firing HE into battleships is 99% of the time pretty much pointless. But we're going to try and put this guy out of his misery and move towards Bravo. We managed to sink him. I do have a lot of damage that I need to heal back, and you do see that a lot of the damage that was done to me was damage over time or not citadel damage. I don't believe I've been citadeled. Most of the damage is healable, and that is basically because the only real damage that I can't heal is citadel damage and torpedo damage. And realistically, the torpedo protection on the sides of this ship are very good. They mitigate a lot of the damage that any sort of torpedoes, whether they're aerial dropped or ship launched, you really mitigate the damage fairly well due to the torpedo belt. I'll try and remember to look at that in port, but I think it's something along the lines of like 56% torpedo protection. Damage reduction, I think, is what they use the correct term. We just barely missed hitting the New Orleans. Unfortunately, he wasn't spotted in time for me to give enough lead, so we do manage to miss him, and he's going to get away for now. But we have the Tirpitz moving in here now, and that's going to give us a nice broadside shot, and hopefully an opportunity to do a little bit of damage. I'm kind of hoping he'll stay here for just a tad bit longer, but unfortunately he goes behind the smoke before I can get another salvo, so time to go for the other enemy Yamato. We'll repair the fire since we are hopefully safely in this smoke here. There's always the chance of torpedoes from something, but we do know that the enemy destroyer has been destroyed, and that makes me very confident that I shouldn't have too much to worry about since I haven't seen any cruisers with torpedoes anywhere close to me. And the Tirpitz was obviously a little farther away. Now I'm going to mention right now that during the course of this battle I totally blanked out and thought for whatever reason that Tirpitz was a Bismarck, so I want to throw that out there now because later on you'll see why that's a fatal mistake of mine. And hint hint, it's the torpedoes. I don't like to do too much spoiler alerts, but I'll explain a little bit later. We are trying to punish the enemy Iowa here for whatever reason. I think he must have realized he was too far in and tried to stop, and now is reversing, but he did stop. And it's unfortunately for him going to be a little too late. We're just trying to get a nice citadel salvo, the one we've been really searching for, and I think we're going to get that and put him fairly weak, just weak enough that our cruisers or someone else can finish him off, and unfortunately it is the Bismarck that does that. I really didn't want to waste another salvo, and plus my main I don't know if it's just me, but I really hate it when I have like the main guns or whatever and they're like all wonky in between the reload times. Like I like them to all fire at the same time. Is that weird? It really bothers me when I, can't fire a full salvo essentially, or I'm firing, front turret goes off, or the forward turret, and then have to wait for the middle turret, another 7-8 seconds. It bothers me. Anyways, we're going to start to see fairly soon my fatal mistake. The Tirpitz, which I thought in this game was a Bismarck, is about to round the corner, as well as the enemy Des Moines, and we're going to hopefully try and punish the Des Moines because he's about to make a big mistake too. It looks like he might have known I was here as well, but unfortunately he doesn't try and dodge, and it really wasn't going to save him. We end up double citadeling him. I wish I could have deleted him because it looks like he'll be killing the friendly Mogami over there, and I'm not going to be able to really chase him down. I don't want to push in here because of the giant number of enemy ships that are past here. Again, I'm not on the most amount of health, so I don't want to push too far and get citadeled from the side. We'll lock onto the Donskoy, but unfortunately I think those were a little bit off, and we only do 4,000 damage. We do get set on fire by the Tirpitz's secondaries, which once again I remind you that I thought was a Bismarck, and we're going to start to see why that was an issue for this game right there. If it was a Bismarck, repairing that fire probably would not have been a bad idea because he's going to go around the corner and his secondary is going to have a shot on me. But because it was a Tirpitz, he did have a shot on me with his torpedoes as he passed by, and now that my damage control party is completely on cooldown, I'm going to take a torpedo right in the nose, which is going to cause me some flooding. And to top that off, the Dmitry Donskoy launched torpedoes as well when he was on his way in front, and so now we're going to probably eat one of those too. But let's see if we can punish this Yamato. 23,000 damage, and we do end up killing him with 2 citadels. Unfortunately though, this is going to be the end of my game, and it is almost the end of the game, but since I do manage to flood to death here, our points lead does drop down quite a bit. If we had just a little bit more, we would have won on points, but now we have to wait a little bit for my team to go ahead and chase down the carrier. And I want to take this time to really throw out one of the major weaknesses of the Yamato. It has very good frontal armor. It has very good guns. It's not that maneuverable for a battleship. However, when you get speed going and you have, good map awareness, things like that, and you like to use your WASD hacks, as we call it on Reddit, you can do quite well. The major weaknesses are things that cause damage over time, which normally are fires, and of course taking torpedoes to the bow of the ship like you saw me doing. If you'll notice in the corner, I did compliment that Benson because I very much appreciated that work, so trust me, battleships will love you if you smoke them up when they need it. Destroyers is very, very handy, especially if you're in ranked. But that was very important to note that damage over time does the most damage to you. So not a bad game, I think, considering we made a fairly fatal flaw at the end, and it was only 13 minutes long for us anyways, 14 minutes total. 251,000 damage I think was a pretty good result. We sunk 3 ships, we hit the citadel on the enemy ships 8 times, and we managed to land 121 secondary hits. Moving on to the team score, we were in first place. We got base experience of 2,722, high caliber award, and the Confederate award as well. Damage caused, of course, most of it was done by the main battery. This is a Yamato. The main battery is your main source of damage, just like any other battleship, really. 210,000 done by the main battery. Secondary battery did 26,000 damage, and something that you should note on ships that you consider doing secondary builds on, they sometimes fire armor-piercing shells, and we see that there is a pretty even split between the damage done by my HE firing secondaries and my AP firing secondaries. They did about 13,000 apiece, so I know, for an example, when it was, I think, Season 4 of Ranked, That was, I think it was season 4. It was tier 7, and a lot of people were like, hey, let's go make a secondary spec Nagato, and that seems like a good idea at first. They have decent range, and they have a lot of secondary guns, but come to find out, and unfortunately I don't think they tell you this in the game. You have to look it up on the internet, but unfortunately their secondaries are almost all armor piercing on the Nagatos, so keep that in mind if you want to make a secondary build for a ship and you're not quite sure what type of ammo that the ship's secondaries fire. And finally, we did 14,000 damage for the fires. Moving on, we took or tanked a potential damage of 1.4, almost 1.5 million damage, but we received in actuality 162,000 damage. A good portion of that was artillery, the 67,000 damage done by the a lot of armor-piercing shells, a little bit of HE. It seemed like we did have a lot more battleships focusing us that match. Torpedoes, of course, 34,000 damage from the plane-launched torpedoes, the Tirpitz launched, and it must have been the Donskoy launched torpedoes. The dive bombers did about 14,000 damage, and combined the fires and flooding did about 46,000 damage, with 21,000 of that being from flooding since I mismanaged my damage control party. Moving on to the credits and experience. This was, I think, a double XP weekend, as well as I have the Type 20 camo and the Military Month contributor flag, so we made 438,000 credits, and we got 16,500 ship experience with about 1,650 free experience. So those numbers are obviously skewed once again because of all the modifiers that my camo flags and the first one of the day gave us. So yeah, keep that in mind. Probably won't get that unless you have flags and camo as well. Let's go on to the build. So now that we're back in port, really quickly, this is the permanent camouflage. I like it, but I don't love it. It just kind of, it's there, it's alright looking, but it's certainly, in my opinion, nothing too special. Anyways, we'll go to the consumables, and pretty much you want the premium repair, well, you do want the premium damage control party and the premium repair party. This is, one of the major things. Again, you didn't really see it much in the battle that I played, but HE spam and torpedo soup spam definitely happens in most Yamato games, so being able to mitigate the damage you take from fires and flooding, very important. And I personally use the Spotting Aircraft 2 on the Yamato. I mentioned that that was a little bit of an older replay, I think, and the time we had just the Catapult Fighter 1. But realistically, the Catapult Fighter doesn't have many uses anymore because of how, it's only up for like a minute 30. And realistically, it can only scatter one squadron of planes that are attacking you, and half the time it doesn't even go for them because it's on the other side of the ship. So realistically, not as handy. I use Spotting Aircraft 2 now. That way I can shoot into smoke screens at, things like Minotaurs and Neptunes. It's very handy to get that bird's eye view so I can pinpoint just where they're firing from inside the smoke. You don't have to have it premium though. I have it premium again because I really don't know what to do with all these credits. And the extra, the cooldown is better on the premium version, but realistically, not necessary. Anyways, going on to the upgrades. Auxiliary Armaments Mod 1. You really don't ever lose main turrets on the ship. The only time it ever seems that you get these knocked out, generally speaking, you get them repaired and, you don't lose them permanently. I can't remember the last time I ever lost a turret permanently on the Yamato, or if I ever have. But the only time they ever really get incapacitated is when they take a hit through the side here while you're aiming at someone else. So really, a lot of things kind of have to be going wrong for you to lose a turret. So if you're playing it right, you generally don't have an issue at all, which is why I go for Auxiliary Armaments Mod 1. In the second slot, Secondary Battery Modification 2. I like a secondary build on the ship, and so I use this to help give them a little bit extra range and a little bit less dispersion. So it's very handy for that. In the third slot, Main Battery Modification 3, this will give you a much better reload. You get 26.4 seconds, I think is what it was. Yes, instead of the, I think, 30 seconds. I do want to go back really quickly. I forgot to mention Aiming Systems Mod 1 on the ship, if you don't want a secondary build, is very good because you already have very good accuracy for a battleship, so this makes you even more accurate and even more punishing with these main battery guns. I just prefer the secondary build to help, get destroyers away from me, and since these turrets turn very slow, 60, what is it? 62.6 seconds with Expert Marksman. I like to have my secondaries able to put out a lot of pressure on targets that get too close. Anyways, moving on to the fourth slot, Damage Control System Mod 1. Pretty self-explanatory for Battleship because these other two are pointless. In the third slot, third slot, whoa, my numbers are way off. Fifth slot, excuse me, Steering Gears Modification 2. You can use Damage Control System Mod 2, but realistically, the Yamato actually has the best turning circle radius of all the Tier 10 battleships at 900 meters. Montana has 10. No, the Montana has 950 meters, and the Grosser Kurfürst has 1,050 meters for turning circles. So Yamato can actually torpedo beat sometimes, and for that reason, I do choose the Steering Gears Mod 2 to help you with that. But I was talking a lot about how, you definitely take a lot of damage from fires, and realistically, Damage Control System Mod 2 is not a bad choice. Finally, you do want Concealment System Mod 1 in the 6th slot. Got my numbers right this time. Because realistically, concealment is useful on every ship, and honestly, you don't really want to be in a situation in the Yamato that you need Target Acquisition System Mod 1, so yeah. Moving on to the Captain. I've actually been using Priority Target on the Yamato. I didn't have it in that game. I've been really experimenting with it lately. Um, I've been using this though because of the limited effect of the catapult thing, and of course the preventative maintenance really doesn't, you really don't need it on the Yamato. So I've kind of been using this just to see, okay, how many people are focusing me, or, is a destroyer looking at me trying to launch torps maybe, or carriers or whatever. I don't know if it works for carriers actually. In the second row though, well, back to this, there really is no other choice in my opinion than this at this point. Second row, Expert Marksman. I mentioned earlier that you have a, 64.2? 62.6, excuse me. Excuse me again, I think I have to cough. I've been talking for a little bit. I don't have any water, so I apologize for that. But you want Expert Marksman because you do have a very long turret traverse time. If you've ever played the Warspite pre-buff, I think it has the same exact turret traverse that the Warspite had. So this ship does not like getting in close. Getting Expert Marksman helps mitigate it just a little bit to make it bearable for longer range or mid-range shots. Third row, your battleship superintendent is always handy to get the extra heal. Fourth row, I go for AFT, and then I go for manual fire control for your secondaries. And after that, I will probably be getting fire prevention, and then either catapult fighter, buff thingy, whatever, or preventative maintenance. One of those with the last one. But realistically, I like to have a big secondary build on this ship, and I don't want to get set on fire as much, so when I get the skill points, we'll be getting fire prevention to merge this into just one fire spot instead of two. Well, anyways, guys, that is going to do it for my Yamato review. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Again, I definitely made some mistakes, but if you do know how to play battleships, and by the time you get to the Yamato, I would hope that you do, the Yamato can be a very rewarding ship, and it certainly is well worth the grind. This is a Steaming Pile of Ships signing out. I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time.